Hello, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks for making time today. And of course, congratulations to the award, the Pushcart Prize in 2025.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. I'm pretty excited to be honest. Like it's not something that I was necessarily working towards. It's not something that I expected. So it really came out of the blue. But digesting it, now I actually received a copy of the book. So once you touch and feel and locate yourself on the index and see your name there, it's such an honor to be honest. And thanks for nominating me in the first place. So that's something that's super super cool. I'm excited.
It's one of our jobs, I think, at the magazine to, make non-native English writing known and bring it out into the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah, congratulations to you. It would not have been possible if it weren't for your story. So, tell me a little bit of where you were when you received the news. What were you doing? What were your first
I do
thoughts?
remember very well. I mean, I can tell you, I'm gonna regress a bit, go back in time. When I received your acceptance, it was like day two of the birth of my daughter, who at that point was needed to stay a bit longer. So I was there, I was worried, and I see this message. I said, okay, so it's and my story was actually written on about Christmas time, and she was born on December 27th. So the timing was super poetic, Christmas baby, Christmas award. So that's the Tint announcement. But like for the push cart, I was with my kid having a relaxed day in a park, and I glance at my phone and I see push cart. Say, okay, congratulations. I don't really understand it in the beginning, right? So when I sat down, it was a picnic. I read it. First thing I told my son, hey, I want a big award. Apparently, I started to Google and digest and understand the situation. He didn't really understand what's going on. Said, oh, cool, good for you. So so it was a beautiful moment, to be honest, realizing the weight of the prize, and it's just an amazing landmark moment for me.
Wonderful. I'm glad that it was received so well. What do you think, maybe, what do recognitions like these currently mean in the literature scene for writers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll have to be honest and humble. This is my first short story to be published, right? So I realize that the odds of winning a Pushcart Prize and having your name there are very long odds, right? So for me personally, I mean, I always told myself, no matter what, published or not recognized, I'll write, because for me, it's an extension of your senses. It's so basically it's your testimony, it's your witness of the way that the things that you see, the stories that come in your head. So I always tell myself I'll write regardless, right? But I'll take myself very seriously if I start to win awards and be published, right? So when that moment comes, it's a moment of reflection to say, you know what? Um, for me personally, as a writer, as somebody who's in the beginning of their literary career, it's a massive boost to say all those stories that I've written already to kind of like start to polish them, send them again to publish more, and just to build on the momentum. Writers in general, to be honest, I imagine it's maybe some people might play humble, but it's always good to be recognized, right? Um, if it wasn't about recognition and mutual connection, why would we write in the first place, right? Otherwise, I would just leave it in a corner in my desk and move on. We want to be not necessarily recognized, but we want to be heard. We want our message to resonate, right? So for me, that's what recognition means.
True. And every list that you're on, every anthology that you're in, it just amplifies your writing.
It does.
Yeah, certainly that's what hopefully the prizes can achieve. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you actually came to writing, because like when I revisited your brief Q&A with Tint, I found it really interesting that actually you read your first novel at the age of 16, and this was The Stranger by Camus. So it's kind of late, but then the subject matter, philosophical issues, are really early maybe for a 16-year-old to process. So I was wondering, what role does philosophy, what role did it play, what role does it play now, and also how does it intertwine with your writing?
Perhaps, if I reflect back on my upbringing, it's kind of interesting because my dad writes poetry. A lot of my relatives, even though they've ended up in technical jobs, doctor, engineer, PhD, and so on. They all had they're all basically missed opportunities for great writers, right? It's just because of the circumstance. I have an Arabic upbringing and so on. Unfortunately, writing was always considered to be the thing on the side and so on, right? So perhaps from that background, the focus has always been when we were young on soccer, on the football, on the games, on other pleasures, right? But I always was a good student, in languages and literature and so on, but never really kind of like grabbed a book until late, like you said. But it's to what attracted me to writing and reading it at large is philosophy. I don't know. I can't tell you why. It's during my undergrad. I did mechanical engineering. I'm a consultant currently. That's my job in process optimization. Um, but this was always my interest. Early from my bachelor, I said, I don't know how the first, other than The Stranger, the first philosophical book that landed on my desk was really resonated with me because that's really my character, the questioning, philosophical questions, if you like. So it's for me, it has that journey 20 years later has not ended. I'm much more well read in philosophy than I am necessarily in literature, but there's a strong intertwine between the two, right? When you think about the famous philosophers, they are also writers, right? So you have an amazing idea, you want to perhaps convey it not in a systematic and theoretical way. You want to convey it through a novel, through a story, right? So that's really the thing that really interested me is that all those writers that I read, Sartre, Nietzsche, Heidegger, Kierkegaard, how can we basically, what did they do? They wrote stories. How did they convey the message? And yeah. So for me, writing the story, The Ubermen, was a learning exercise in how to tell a philosophically themed story in a digestible manner, in a nice manner, right?
Yeah, and I mean, in the Uberman, we have like a ton of topics. So I'd just like to probably pick up on two for a brief intro into your thought process, and the rest is for the readers to pursue. What really stands out to me in the Uberman is that it's just a story full of contrasts, right? So we have the rich, we have the poor, we have the ones with the family, the ones without the family, we have the upper class, the lower class, those who receive deliveries, those who do deliveries, and then also those who celebrate Christmas and those who actually work on Christmas. So these are just some of the contrasts that are just right there, kind of, if you read it first. And I was wondering, thinking about these contrasts, do you think that our world is organized in these dichotomies? Or is the world organized in dichotomies for the protagonist of Uberman?
I mean, dichotomies are always there, right? So when we take a look at them, like you said, differences in classes, differences in backgrounds, differences in opportunity and luck, like in the story, I allude to it, the driver, our protagonist is a well-read, educated person, but it's just a bit down on his luck, right? So it's exactly that, he's a philosopher, he's somebody who's interested in philosophy, but he's doing Uber Eats delivery, right? So he basically, like you said, from a philosophical point of view, he sees contrasts, he sees dichotomies, he sees, polarities in the world, right? But then throughout the course of his own experience and that Christmas Eve, he realizes that, there is the theory of it and there's the, living it concretely, right? I mean, it's inspired. Finally, I guess the reader will find out it's obvious. It's the Uberman, it's Nietzsche, right? And yeah, Nietzsche, perhaps, some might take him to have extreme views. Some might think that he's like a, a dangerous philosopher in a sense that he's a bit brutal in his this deconstruction of our morality and so on, right? But this, exactly the animus of the story is very much the dichotomy between the uber man or human, what we want to aspire to, and the last man, right? So that's the critique of Nietzsche to basically I guess mass society and the static state that a lot of us find ourselves in a commercial capitalistic world. So that's really the dichotomy that animates it.
And you already also mentioned that one thing that we see play out is also how how the structure that the particular Uberman protagonist is in, how it really works, because I get a strong sense of solidarity from your story. So especially among the drivers, the delivery guys, we see that they are just very close-knit. And the first act of solidarity comes when so they wait in line at this fancy Japanese restaurant, right? And to pick up their orders, and they're really hungry. And so Mr. Wong goes to a fast food chain restaurant, picks up an order there, and delivers it right to this fancy restaurant. Of course, it's not tolerated. Something happens, and I would actually like to listen.
The trapdoor sprang open. The redhead with the plunging neckline was the first to witness the mayhem. 30 seconds later, a short, balding man, presumably the manager, barreled out of the kitchen. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "This is a 5-star restaurant, not your ghetto hangout. No one is allowed to eat or drink here." Ali Riza put down his whopper. "What is this, prison? Even prisoners have right to food and water." Mr. Wong confessed to the crime and provided his order number as directed. "Your order is cancelled, Wong. I'm reporting you to Uber. Get out. And dump all the food in this garbage bag. Get rid of it. I don't want to see anything lying around." "Cancel my order too. I'm out of here," said Ali Riza. He made the rounds with the garbage bag along with Mr. Wong, and then headed for the door. Papa Jean and a few others followed them. Before stepping into the street, Ali Riza turned around and stared at me. I didn't budge. "It's okay, man," he said. "It makes sense. You're here to report on the street dogs, not be one of them." Then they were gone.
So we see that they all follow suit, stick together, and say, "Hey, I don't care about the money at this point. This person was just so nice to me. I will show solidarity with him."
Yeah.
Our protagonist, though, does not follow suit
Right.
because he has this crazy high-paying job waiting for him. Yet, though, the other Uber guys come for his rescue later.
Right.
And I'm really wondering, where is their motivation in this?
I mean, just if I may just like give you a side note, is that from my from my career, as an engineer and working in process optimization, a good chunk of my career was working in production plants. Here in Montreal, I worked also in the States, in Massachusetts. I worked with a lot of blue collar people, right? So this is kind of was a bit of an inspiration, is that from a distance, the blue collar worker, the new immigrant might seem anonymous, whether they're doing an Uber job or working in a factory and stuff. So for me, honestly, and might seem a bit hard. You might seem to have a hard shell in the beginning, hard to crack and access, right? Rough around the edges, as they say. But I noticed that, some of my best friendships and relationships have been with people from that, let's call it the blue collar milieu. I don't like to label it too much. People are different, right? But there are certain things, I think, honestly, a brutal honesty, directness to the engagement, a passion about what they do, an alienation sometimes about what they do. So all of these things, honestly, kind of attracted me to bring that element to the story. At the beginning, it was very accentuated, call it the the dichotomy between rich and poor and so on. Like you said, you alluded to dichotomies. And I was, the character that I had, the rich person living in an upper scale neighborhood, it was a bit accentuated, the fact that they can be perceived as evil or bad. So I kind of had to tone this down, right? Why does our protagonist, he's put in a situation, right? There is philosophy talking and there's philosophy living and doing, right? The philosophy of Nietzsche is about, and many philosophers, it's moral action, moral decisions in action, right? Not in theory. So he's put in that situation, right? Pros versus cons, ends do the means justify the ends? So he focuses a lot on the ends and forgets the means, right? Why do they help him? I don't really know, to be honest. But it has to be a sense of solidarity. I'll leave that up to the reader to decide, right? But doing good for the sake of doing good, right? Helping somebody out, even though they turned your back, or they're back on you, like 5 minutes ago. That's the essence of empathy. That's the essence of overcoming oneself, right? That's the main theme of being an uber person, right? Overcoming our worst selves, right? Whether it's whether it's for the sake of our own betterment or for the sake of the betterment of our group.
Oh, that's a lot of food for thought there. That's for sure. And also this sense of empathy, maybe that's actually, kind of a glue that can dissolve the borders between the individual contrasting fields. So maybe there's some hope in there. There's certainly some hope in the story.
Thank you.
So everyone who wants to read it up, you can find it on tintjournal.com. It's in the spring 24 issue. I would just like to ask you one last question. Seeing yourself where you are now, with your debut story, getting a recognition like the Pushcart Prize, what is a piece of advice that you would like to share with an aspiring non-native English writer? What's there to know? What's there to pursue?
You can hear it from my accent. I'm not a native speaker, right? So I doubted myself a million times before I started writing, right? I didn't doubt my ideas. I thought the ideas that I wanted to convey are interesting, which I'm sure many, I guess it might be a fair statement to say that the majority of the English speaking world might not be, native speakers, right? So the world, for the large part, I'm speaking to you, you're somewhere, I guess, in Europe, and I'm in North America, we're communicating English. So English has become, for a long time, the lingua franca, right? So people always say, okay, what do I do? I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Do I write in my own native language? The readership, and exposure will be limited, or do I write in English? So I think my message to people is don't be afraid, write, even if your voice in English might sound, different than the mainstream. It's still it's your ideas, it's your point of view that matters, right? And we're living in a world right now where diversity of voices enriches the medium, enriches the dialogue. So write, don't be afraid, and make sure that it is presentable, right? If work on bettering your English. It's a learning experience. It was a learning experience for me. Reading something is one thing, writing is another, right? So working, this story was 11 editions, sorry, 11 revisions, right? So the language improved and it became more crisp. So really the message to people is write, your voice, your story is important. It has to be heard. And it worked for me, right? If you don't take a chance, you're guaranteed to remain, your thoughts remain in your head. So write and don't be intimidated.
Definitely something to take to heart. Thank you so much for making time today. It was a lovely conversation, and everything, the story that we referred to, you find it in the link below. So just click on it and you're hopefully right there. Think about Nietzsche while reading it, or read Nietzsche afterwards or before that. We'll see. And yeah, have a good rest of the day. Thank you so much, Nadir. Thanks for making time for this, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and I appreciate your support and the wonderful work that you do at Tint Journal. Thank you very much.